Omar, thanks for coming on the show, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for
Yeah,
having
yeah.
me.
There's so many places to go, kind of regarding Latin American talent, and I think the first question I have is more just like about sort of a entrepreneurship question, which is how hard was it to build a marketplace? Because that always seems like one of the hardest things to build. It's like a chicken or egg problem where you need
Yeah,
buyers to get sellers and so on. So I'd love to hear what it took to do that.
of
So it's a
course.
big question and all.
Yeah, it's a good question for starting. So, um, like you mentioned, it is really, really hard to build both sides at the same time. So you have to focus on one. That's my main advice here. And you normally start with the supply part. You need to get this good talent. In our case, Symbiosis is a marketplace for hiring software engineers in countries like Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, Brazil, but they are not freelancers. They are already working at a small software agencies. So they are current employees, but they happen to be unassigned to any project at this time. And this normally happens because they just finish a big project and they are waiting for be assigned to a next project. So we have this time frame where they are available. It's just a small window when these great talent, specialized engineers are available. So what we're doing here at Symbiosis is that we create this platform so tech companies in the US, mainly startups or other software agencies, can access and post a project and then get these candidates from multiple software agencies. They can evaluate them, interview them, and then decide if they want to hire under a flexible model. So that was kind of a commercial, but the main idea here is that we realized that it was very, very important for us to start having the top software agencies in the region to join our platform so they can promote great talent. And that great talent was speaking by themselves. Like when these companies, the startups, reach out to us and say like, "Hey, we're looking for a software engineer which is specialized on React and has 5+ years of experience, and we only have $5,000 as a monthly budget," and they post that, and then they realize that they get access to so good talent out there, and they realize like, hey, and they are working, they will be assigned 3 months or 6 months to my project, and then that's it. I don't have to worry about firing anyone or something like that. So then they say like, okay, it's interesting. And once we get that part covered, and we start getting more traction, more clients, the supply part also grows. So my recommendation here is that focus on having the best supply part at the beginning, so that will attract more clients, more customers, and once you start getting this critical mass, of clients interacting with supply part, you just start getting more supply, and that improves the quality of the engineers that you're presenting.
Right, right. And I have so many questions about that model because it seems a little bit different than others. So, but I'm going to put a pin in those. And first, I'd
Mhm.
just love to hear your experience with how the landscape of talent has evolved in Latin America. I guess like in the U.S., when we were talking about globalized talent, it started with India, then
Mhm.
Philippines, and Eastern Europe, and now Latin America seems like the newer player. So I just love to see like in your lifetime how have you seen it change?
Right. It's a good question. So I believe that maybe 10 years ago, tech talent here in Latin America in general was kind of small, for looking for a better word. But I mean, I believe that something that changed a lot is that we start getting a lot of investment for startups as well. Something that happens is that a lot of VC funds in the US start looking to Latin America and say like, hey, we can also build companies like Rappi, for example. For instance, in Colombia, it's like Uber Eats, but it's growing so fast, and they became like the first unicorn from Colombia, and then they have a lot of unicorns in Brazil, for example. So a lot of VCs still realizing that it was like a good bet to start investing in these companies that could also replicate some models that was proven in the US. And and then after that, once these companies, the startups start growing, they start hiring software engineers. So there was this huge demand of software talent. So that in a certain way help people to realize like if they pursue a tech a career in the tech field, they could also get a good job with a good salary, good income from them. So that was interesting for them. So let's say like 15 years, 10 years from now, they start pursuing these activities, and then this tech industry start growing really, really, really fast. I mean, like we passed from having 500 millions of VC investments in 2016 to 4.6 billion dollars last year. So it was a huge increase, right? So that prompted like a lot of software talent, a lot of software companies here in the region, and they are all pursuing to create more startups, to also create more companies in that matter. So yeah, I believe that it is growing. It is really growing really, really fast. We have people that are really, really talented, maybe 10 years of experience in certain technologies, and they are looking for more challenge. Like they want to keep motivated and they want to learn more. So they want to be trying new projects every time. So I believe that this industry and the tech side of Latin America is growing really, really fast, and the benefit that we're so close to the US and we're under the same time zone, that also makes a huge difference regarding hiring people from other places around the globe, meaning like India, Eastern Europe. Well, you have to wait a lot of time to get an answer, right? In your case, it's like you're working at the same time, so you can travel there. You need to meet with the team and then go back to the US at the same day. So that's kind of, we have some advantage in that part. And I believe that since 1980s, there's a company that is called SoftTech. Maybe you have heard about it, but it's a huge software development company that provides nearshore services. This term of nearshore is like you're so close to the country, right? And so that started growing. Those were like the pioneers in this space, and then there are a lot of companies start growing around that model. But then a lot of companies start offering the services by not only assigning engineers but doing the job under a scope. So that was kind of and also another approach that we have. So yeah, I believe that it's growing, and it's growing really, really fast.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I guess one impression that I've had is that I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is that hiring dev talent in the US is like you kind of have this binary. Either like you have the people that are like rock stars and they went to Stanford or Carnegie Mellon and they cost the bundle and they're getting bid on by Facebook and Google and so on. And or you have nothing in terms of like hiring US talent, because we haven't. I feel like the US hasn't done a great job. The quote unquote, it's become like a meme now, and it's become like really controversial with the idea of like teaching people to code, basically. So I'm trying to bring this to a question, but I guess like, are you seeing the same thing? It's almost like it's not just an arbitrage, and it's not just that it's cheaper in somewhere like Latin America. It's like the talent just isn't even here unless you are like a Google or something. Like, exactly. I'd love to hear if you agree, disagree.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, the thing here is that we realize that there's a shortage of software engineers in the US, and has been for a couple of years now. And the thing is that, like you mentioned, big companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google are the first one to gather all the available talent, right? And then small companies, early stage startups, struggle a lot, and they have to compete against each other for the remaining talent. And then they have to settle with hiring people from other countries, hiring people, like you mentioned, from India or from Eastern Europe, that sometimes it's not the optimal way to develop your product, because like, having these cultural differences, and also they try to communicate with them. Sometimes, it is hard to communicate and be on the same page. And when you're starting your company, relying on those factors can actually kill your company. So it is very, very important to focus on that. So I believe that it is true. There's a shortage. It's not like you're not trying hard and you're not finding people. It's a problem. It is actually a problem. So I believe, and the other thing that we realize is that Latin America already has a lot of infrastructure, a lot of resources that are unassigned. Like I mentioned earlier, they are doing bench time at the moment. So it made sense for us to connect both parts. The high demand for tech talent that we have in the US, and all the infrastructure and resources that we have in Latin America, and maybe connect them under a flexible model in that sense. So only with the on demand, like if they require for a couple of months, they can hire them, and afterwards they can release them back to their original companies, right? So that was kind of the model that we presented. But it is true, and just from throwing some facts here, every year there are more than 500,000 software companies in the US, and every year we have 40,000 new startups, new tech startups that are being created in the US. So all of those companies requires at least one software engineer. So you can imagine that every year this gap is growing, right? This shortage of engineers is growing. So we need to fulfill that gap, and we need to help connect both parts.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's one hell of a gap. So that's interesting. And so a couple questions there. I guess one is it seems like the model of on the supply side of kind of partnering with software agencies is like a little unconventional, it seems like. So can you tell me more about that? Like, what was the decision to partner with agencies versus like trying to get a circle of freelancers or something like that?
Right. So yeah, we started as a software agency about, I don't know, 7 years ago now. And we were based in Monterrey, Mexico, and we had a commercial office here in Austin, Texas. And what happened is that we realized that after we finished a project, we were used to have one or two of our engineers unassigned, and that was representing a huge cost for us because we still have to pay their salaries. So we have to assign to internal projects, but that doesn't represent any revenue or income for us. So we reached out to a former client, and we realized that they just raised a fund there. I believe that they raised a pre-seed or a seed round or something like that. So we talked to them and said like, hey, we have these engineers available. Would you like to hire them just for a couple of months and stuff like that? And that worked out. And we realized that maybe other software agencies were experiencing the same problem than us. So we reached out to them and we asked them, and they told us like, hey, we actually, we have one or two engineers as well. So we start building this platform. So I believe that what differentiates us is that we understand the problem on a deeper level because we were part of it in a certain way. So we start building this platform surrounding that problem, like learning about that interaction with other software agencies. And we start building all the technical features that we need to help them to reach to a wider audience, right? To a wider market, so they can assign those available engineers. And the main reason that we don't want to work with freelancers at this point is because we already have platforms like Upwork, like TopTal out there. And they are very, very, very good at that. Like you can find good freelancers there. But most of our clients at these companies don't like to work with freelancers, mainly because they know that these engineers are working on multiple projects at the same time. There's a lack of commitment to your project, the accountability part. Sometimes they stop responding to you. So that can also kill your company. Imagine that you hire a freelancer for a couple of hours per month. They are not working full time in your project, and after a couple of months, they release that version that you need that work. But after 3 months or 4 months, you want to reach back to them and continue to work, and it's impossible to reach out. Sometimes they stop responding to you and stuff like that. So in our case, the main differentiator we have is that these engineers are already hired by the software agency. So these companies will provide the infrastructure, the equipment for them to work. They are part of a team. And these software agencies are specialized in a particular technology, meaning like a front end or back end. So they can all help each other to give tips and how to improve their development skills. So it's more like a community. It's more like a hub instead of an individual working by their own. So that's right. Kind of a different approach. And if you have like any problem, any issue with the performance of the engineer, you can reach out to the agency and the agency will help you out on that. Otherwise, it is impossible to reach out to other, if you're working with a freelancer, well, who's managing that freelancer, right? So, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a lot like our value prop doing new business for agencies, professional service companies is the consistency element. So that makes a
Hmm.
lot of sense. And we've had the same problem hiring like individual designers, developers.
Hmm.
Is that they're always looking for greener pastures, and,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's sort of like I get it because there's not enough skin in the game. If you've got a sporadic project once every few months or something, it's hard to keep people around. So
Hmm.
that totally makes sense to me. And I guess with that in mind, what are you doing to vet talent? What are you doing to get people onboarded and kind of figure out what's an agency worth having in your roster?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, and this also brings me back to the first question that you made. So, at the beginning, what we start doing is that we invite almost every software agency. Like it was funny because it was like we reach out to them, but given that we didn't have like any project at the moment, it was really really hard to get them motivated to be part of our platform. Like you mentioned, the chicken egg part. So what happened there is that we start inviting companies like, hey, join us. And once we get a project, that will be, you will be the first one to apply with your candidate, blah, 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 blah. So our, our quality get compromised in a certain way, like it was part of, okay, if you're a software company that have our process were like, was like, we we start looking to their backgrounds, right? Like how many years of experience, how many years in the market, you have a portfolio as well. And if you have available engineers, because the idea here is that you don't hire an engineer for assigning to a project, right? It's someone that you already have in your in-house a team, and then you assign them to a project. It's very, very different because some of these companies were hiring right away when they get a need. So yeah, that was kind of the betting process at the beginning, but we realized that it was very, very important for us to start raising the bar. When we start doing, it's like once we realized that some partners apply with candidates that they don't even know, and they were like, hey, yeah, I just find the perfect candidate for your project, and they sent it, and it was like, have you worked with this engineer before? No. Do you know if he speaks English fluently? No. Do you know if blah, blah, blah? So then we realized that, okay, those are not good partners. We don't need those kind of companies in our platform.
Yeah.
So we keep like only one or two at the beginning, and we were like, if we have a project that have a very very specific technology, and we weren't able to search candidates from the current pool, then we look for other companies to join, and we start the vetting process, and we talk to them, and then what happened is that we start getting these two groups of companies inside our supply part. And what happened is that only the best software agencies were able to assign multiple engineers, and they were able to have like these conversations with new leads in our company, saying like, hey, we already have 6 engineers assigned through Symbiosis. So we're working, some of our companies are hiring a second or third engineer from our team. So that was kind of that give them a lot of confidence, like that they feel like some confident, like the model was working, and the leads feel like, okay, I can trust this guy, like it seems like they're doing a good job. I can hear the references from other customers as well. So
Yep.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it's a trial and error, like everything. So that makes sense. And I'd love to. So Latin America is a big place. Lots of different countries, lots of different sensitivities. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on or your experience. Vetting agencies in different places. My guess is that an agency in Rio is going to have completely different issues than an agency in Buenos Aires, different than
Yeah.
Mexico. So I'd love to just hear about the specific idiosyncrasies between the countries and just kind of what you're staying ahead of.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because even though that we are from the same Spanish speaking background, like in a certain way that we were used to have some similar, I don't know, costumes or anything like that. It is different. Every country is very, very different. And to be honest, we started in Mexico, so we focus on Mexico. That's the country that we know best in our way. So we start reaching out to more companies, and right now, maybe 80% of our partners, they all come from Mexico, and the other 20 come from Argentina, Colombia, and Uruguay. Those are the other three countries that we have. We haven't entered to Brazil yet. We know that Brazil is very, very strong in software development. They have really, really good talent there, and that's maybe our next step. But I believe that at this moment, what we realize is that we need to really, really vet these partners and to understand them in the best way, in the best possible way for us to provide value to them. So it was easier for us to focus right now mainly in Mexico, given that we understand that market, we understand the dynamics that they follow there, and then it was easier for us because also in the US they're like, oh, okay, they are located in Mexico City, they are located in Monterrey, in Guadalajara, so they already heard sometimes about those cities, so they realize like, okay, it's pretty close from, for example, from California, from New York, from Texas. It is pretty easy to travel to Mexico City and then be back in the United States maybe next day or the same day, right? So we started focusing on that, and then when we got demand for talent that we couldn't find in partners here in Mexico, then we moved to Argentina and we talked with them, and they joined our platform as well, and then to Colombia and then to Uruguay. So it was more like once we need to move to those countries to search talent or to search new partners there, then we do it. Like only when we need to do that, and that helped us to realize like, okay, is it necessary at this moment to move to that really? And then after answering that question, we realized that, okay, it is important to do that right now. So we start moving to other different cities, and then we start growing, and then we start identifying different needs those companies have. But at the end, it's technology, and the technology is universal, it's global. So if you're a good developer, you're welcome to join our platform, and then you will, because we're sure that you will perform as expected for a US project, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And right now we're at like a weird place where work life culture is changing a lot, and everyone's trying to figure out which way it'll go. We've had a remote company for 5 years, so for us, we kind of feel like Sherpas almost. Like with my girlfriend, I'm trying to get her to like not work till 10 p.m. every night just because you can. So I'd love to hear like your thoughts on how the cultures are affecting each other. There's the cliche startup Silicon Valley culture of just work all hours of the night and hustle and all that stuff, and then there's the cliche of Latin America where you, God forbid, enjoy life a little bit, and relax it and so on. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on like how these things are affecting each other. And what's, and is there one that's dominating more than the other? Are they actually like positively affecting each other? Maybe.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I believe that once Latin America start getting a lot of investment from VCs, those VCs start requesting more results, right? Like asking for more result, more traction, more. So then that culture that like I mentioned, the Silicon Valley culture of hustle and, like looking for more revenue and developing products really, really fast, that also starts getting into those regions, right? Like entrepreneurs as in Latin America are aware that they need to struggle a lot. They need to hustle in order to get results, right? So they are used to work hard as well. And I believe that technology, like I mentioned before, is global. So if you're a good developer, you're a good developer everywhere. Like it doesn't matter if you're in Latin America and you're in India, you're in Eastern Europe, you're in the United States. It doesn't matter. If you're a good developer, you're gonna excel, and you're gonna do your best for delivering a product. So I believe that once you get motivated because you get this opportunity to build something that you care and to build something that you are interested in, well, that's a huge combination. People are motivated, people that is very, very talented are ready to start building something that they want. That will only generate like a good result. So we start seeing that maybe 10 years ago, they start growing this part. They start building these software products, and they start realizing that they can also share their knowledge with other fellow entrepreneurs there, and then I believe that both that interaction between the U.S. and also Latin America is going to become or is becoming really, really strong. They are very, very connected. And most of the engineers that we have talked to, they want to work with for companies in the US, or they want to work for startups in Latin America that are very, very similar than startups in the US, like these tech companies, this Google culture stuff. So they want to work in those kind of companies and building products that will change in a certain way the way we interact and the way the world works, right? So yeah, I believe that we have there a particular interest from, in this case, from software engineers to really work at challenging projects and wherever they are in the US or in Latin America, but they want more. They want to get challenged. They want to learn more. So I believe that's a good fit for both cultures at this moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. And with that, I'd love to hear just kind of like where do you see the gaps? Like where do you see the most demand, and specifically, different specializations of tech that's hardest to find? Like where what are you kind of working on now?
Okay, so yeah, we start realizing that there are some trends right now. People are using React a lot. If we talk about technologies per se, people are using React. People are using Node. JS as well for backend, and they're also using for, I don't know. I believe that we realize that this is something that happens. People are moving from the traditional technologies to new technologies, but then they come back to the original technologies like PHP as well. So it is very, very interesting. So the main idea that we have is that we need to be able to provide any technology, because given that in our case, Symbiosis is not hiring anyone and we don't have any engineers in-house, but instead we reach out to other agencies, it is easier for us to offer their talent, like their infrastructure, their resources. So I believe that in this case, it doesn't matter if the trends change, we will be able to provide that talent. And the engineers here are learning the new technologies all the time. Like we find people that have 3-4 years of experience working with Node, for example. And maybe it doesn't sound like okay, it has a lot of experience, but they do because their projects were like really, really challenging. So it is amazing to learn about their backgrounds, their profiles. So I believe that it doesn't matter what technologies are, like if they're changing, if they're putting new technologies out there, these engineers are always learning about them, and they want to get involved in projects using those new technologies. So yeah, I believe that the important part here is that people are able to learn stuff really, really fast, and they are also able to share that knowledge with other engineers in the zone.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to kind of bring this down to earth, so let's say there's a small tech startup or an agency that's looking for dev talent. For those that haven't been through the process before, especially outsourcing somewhere like Latin America, what's a good way to communicate? Like, is there an ideal like test project that you're seeing clients give? Is there how does onboarding typically play out the best way?
Okay, right, yeah. So it's interesting because the traditional way is that you go to, I don't know, Google and you put like software agencies in Mexico, right? And then you start doing your search, your research about these companies, and you reach out to some of them. You have maybe a call with their sales department, and they will all say like, yeah, you just get to the right place, right? Like here's we have the best talent in Mexico. Our available talent right now are those engineers, blah blah, and they are the best ones. And maybe you will say like, hey, it looks good. Here's our portfolio, blah blah. These are the engineers that we have, and that's good, But I truly believe that the main process that you have to do in order to get the best candidates is to compare. You need to go to multiple agencies, and you have to reach out to them, and you have to do some due diligence about their portfolios, their companies they have worked with. Also reach out to some customers that they have before. And so basically what we're doing is that we're doing that job for you in a certain way, because we reach out to their customers. We realize that they have past experience in developing a project using the particular technology that you need, that you're looking for, and how many engineers they have in their offices. If they're a very small company, or if they have 50 plus engineers, right? And also, if they are used to work remotely, maybe they're local, like they're focused to work in Mexico City and that's it. Or maybe they're used to, they already have experience assigning engineers to projects in the US or Canada before. So I believe that the right process that a company should follow is to compare, to bet by themselves, do some due diligence out there. And after they compare, also from multiple options, maybe Mexico and also Argentina and maybe Colombia, and then you have to interview the candidates. That's a must. Like you have to talk with the engineers directly, without having any other guy involved during the interview. Like you have to be able to communicate with them, to understand them as well, to let them present their work. They have a portfolio. You need to see their work, and that's a very, very important process. And then you can send some tests to them. Like sometimes you buy tests from, I don't know. Yeah, we have found that a lot of customers use platforms like Udemy, and they send some tests using those tools to the engineers. They get results in real time, and they can evaluate those results, right? So, and after you try them in that way, normally you can ask for a trial period, meaning like maybe 1 month, and see if that works out. And if it doesn't works out, well, okay, you need to have the option to finish the collaboration at that moment, right? Like if you don't feel like the onboarding process is going well, the engineer is it's not a good fit for your company, for your culture, something like that, then you have to be able to finish, to end that collaboration right away, right? You don't have to wait like, oh, I signed a contract for 6 months, I'm screwed. No, you have to be able to do that. So those would be my main advice there. And don't settle. I mean, like, don't settle for the first option. That's my main advice there, because sometimes engineers, tech companies are like, we need someone now, like for yesterday. Like it doesn't matter who he is, if he knows how to develop in React, hire him. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think engineering is kind of interesting because it's unlike design and other things where it's a little bit more what you see is what you get, as well as the communication and the stuff that you can figure out through vetting. It's a little bit more like, somebody that's building scaffolding or piping inside of a wall, where it takes somebody else looking at it to be like, okay, well, this guy did this, or woman did this really well, or did this really badly, or something like that. So is there any process you recommend for dealing with that? Like to actually figure out, okay, after the fact, is this code actually done well, done not well? And it takes a high level of expertise to actually be able to vet that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I believe that normally these companies already have a CTO and maybe a couple of software engineers, and they just need to boost their tech teams, right? They need to hire someone just to meet a deadline. And these particular companies are able to test those engineers maybe in a deeper way, right? Like evaluate their code and realize if they maybe after they send the test and they realize how they wrote some code and the techniques they use, their skills. So maybe they can have a good idea of the quality of the engineer, right? Like they will say like, okay, this is a good engineer, it's a good fit for a company. but only when you start working and then you realize like, okay, I was wrong or I was right on that, right? If it's a good fit for my current team, it's able to work with them, right? The teamwork. And but some of these companies that are current customers, some of them are non-technical funders, so it's virtually impossible for them to vet those engineers, right? They trust a lot on what we say in this case, right? Like we in this case we become like their CTOs for an instance. So we can also help you vet those engineers before you hire them. We can run some tests. Also, we know that given that they are part of our pool of partners agencies, these agencies already have a couple of years working with them, so they can tell you like, okay, we know that these engineers work well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have like in-house, right? For so many years. So I believe that we kind of solved that problem for the non-technical as entrepreneurs, founders, and also for the technical entrepreneurs. Like you try them out, like we offer you this 1 month for it's like a trial period when you realize if the onboarding process is doing well or not, and after that you decide you want to hire them for a longer period, like maybe 6 months or one year, and that's it. So yeah, it's difficult. Like you mentioned, it's not something like you can see on their portfolio and you realize like, hey, these are good engineers, and that's it. You need to hire them, try them out, and then you realize if it's a good fit or not. But it's something that you can realize really, really quickly. Maybe in the first 2 weeks, you realize if someone is working and is getting things done and is understanding your project. That's very, very important. So yeah, you can realize that in the first 2 weeks, and then you decide if you want to continue or not. So that's our approach there. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And at the end of the day, it's about vetting and trust. So I think a lot of our listeners and clients' value propositions are pretty similar. So
Yeah.
Omar, kind of getting towards the end of the time, how can people get in touch with you and follow what you're up to?
Of course. So yeah, you can find us. Our website is symbiosis.team. You can reach out to them. You can also reach out to me here. My email is omar@symbiosis.team. I would love to answer any possible questions. And yeah, you can follow also in social media. We have a LinkedIn, symbiosis.app. And we also have Twitter and Facebook. We have our page there. And please, if you ever have any questions about hiring people from Latin America, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to give you advice on the process, where to look for good talent, and also to help any possible way. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Omar, thanks so much for your time.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.